Okay, sorry about that.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to call the Tuesday, July 20th, 2021 meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Customers wishing to address the commission for items that are not on the agenda, please fill out the request to speak form and give to the administrative assistant in attendance at the meeting prior to speaking. Customers wishing to address the commission during a specific agenda item other than the rate hearing will be given an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Each customer will be given 3 minutes to address the commission. We are here to listen. Any follow-up or feedback will be done by email on anything that cannot be resolved this evening. All right, I don't see anybody to address the commission. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougall to approve the agenda. McDougall,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Thompson. Okay, entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by McDougall, seconded by Paulson to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none. McDougall, what say you?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Thompson? Yes. Customers to be heard or recognitions? Don't see anybody. And Dennis isn't here. Is this Dennis's last meeting, or is this he?
He'll be at the next meeting.
He'll be at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. And old business? Anybody? Fort City Council, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick item here. It's not really MPS related, but we did pass a tax exemption for a new for Southmore Plaza, which is the old Sunmark. Joel, I don't know if you remember the old Sunmark. And so we have good things coming up. It's right off the interstate on exit 1, but we have a new development there. We have a new development with apartments there. So it's gonna shape up around there. It's gonna be a nice gateway to Moorhead with that new development. So, and then we did have a vector discussion on Monday night. I'm not gonna go into that. You can find it on YouTube or watch it, but that's all I had.
Thank you. Public Service Commission, any meetings? I don't believe so, but I'd ask. General Manager's Report, Mr. Schmidt.
Sure. A couple of items I'll bring up. I'll have Marc Moilanen come up. He'll do his normal monthly update on collections process due to COVID-19 and where we're currently sitting on that. Sounds like it's going pretty good. I'll let Marc address the commission on the rest of it.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you, Travis. Marc Moilanen, Controller, Moorhead Public Service. As Travis indicated, the rollout of the payment plan agreement program that was approved by you as presented to the city has been successfully implemented. We did have 554 accounts take advantage of that 24-month deferral, so they were able to take their account balances, spread them out, and add them to future utility bills for up to 24 months. We're about 2 or 3 months into it, at least 2 months, so everybody's been billed at least twice. And what we ran into is we ran into about a little under 10%, or about 57 accounts, actually, or 47 accounts actually defaulted on their first 2 payments. They didn't make their first 2 payments. They fell back into our normal collection processes. They had services disconnected in order to prompt payment of at least the electric and water portion of the bills. Of the 47 defaults, 11 had their loans or payment plan agreements reinstated, with the understanding that future they will not be able to reinstate that program again. So far it's been pretty successful. Of the 544 or 554 that we started with, we're down to 450 that are still active, and this is after the defaults and everything. So a fair number of accounts have either paid out their balances in full, or able to find assistance money to get the balance paid down, or they've moved out of the City of Moorhead service area. That remaining balance was added to their final bill, and it's in the process of our collection that we do, which goes up to including sending them to collection agencies if they're not paid within 60 days after moving Moorhead, or entering to, again, a suitable payment arrangement. On the positive side, we noticed that we're back to just about normal in terms of past dues, where we were back in late 2019 in terms of overall past dues. So the program, again, was very successful in taking what we're getting to be alarming large values past due to back to where we were in the past. With that, we still have West Central Minnesota Communities Actions providing a lot of assistance for electric usage. We're encouraging those that still have past due balances to continue to apply through their programs. They've extended it through right up to the next season, which starts in October again. So they do have quite a bit of funding available. They have also lowered their income requirements so that more people will qualify. The state of Minnesota's rent help program is currently underway. I'll just say that they are having some hiccups getting the money out, but we are aware that they are at least looking at some applications. They have said they've approved them, but they're not able to give us guarantees as to how much they are approving. But we're working through that process, and again, encouraging those that have non-electric balance outstanding to look at the Minnesota Rent Help Program for the rental assistance and utility assistance. So overall, pretty good. A couple of hiccups with the defaults, but we're monitoring them, giving customers the opportunity to reinstate their plans by catching up and getting back to where they were after agreeing to make the monthly payments. So with that, I'll answer any questions that may be out there.
I just want to say it's amazing. I mean, the response, I think, is very positive, but also the numbers look really good.
Yeah, it again feels very good. We're back to where we were back before the pandemic started. So we're back to our normal business as usual. And it, again, happened very good with your assistance, approving that program. I think it was a very fair program for those that did run into arrears, to allow them up to 24 months in the future to catch up and get those balances paid in full rather than require it all up front.
Madam Chair. So Marc, how is the amounts being distributed over 24 months? Are those being tracked as accounts receivable? And will it affect our finances at all this year as far as our budgets are concerned?
The balances are still out there as receivables. They're classified temporarily as like loans on our system. So they're not included in the true accounts receivable, but because there are the agreements out there to allow them to be deferred. So we are tracking them in a separate bucket, as so to speak. But
Okay.
They are on our books and they will be represented at year end.
Thank you.
One other item too, there is a water assistance help program that's in the works as well, and we've been talking about this for a few months. I was on a call a couple weeks ago, and it sounds like it's taking them some time as well to get that structured and up and running as well too. At the earliest, it sounds like that'll be available in October as well for water utility assistance. I don't know the dollars of it, but at the earliest, it'll be October. It could fall November, December timeframe as well, but it's something that they're working on too to get up and running. I think it would be very similar to the LIHEAP program.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Also, a couple other items as well. In the packet, there's also the notification, Western Area Power Administration, WAPA, gave us their preliminary drought adder notification. since our last meeting. Preliminary, they're looking at no drought adder at this point in time. Again, this is the preliminary piece. We won't get the final answers until September, October timeframe. And we'll provide that information to you as soon as we have it. If there's going to be any changes, at this point, we're not expecting any, but we'll see how the drought conditions go in the area before they make some changes. And then just a couple other pieces. Today, we sent out a press release about a mandatory water restrictions. I'm going to have Marc Pritchard, our water plant supervisor, come up, speak to that a little bit, and then we've a couple other items after that. I'll speak verbally about.
All right, thank you, Travis. Marc Pritchard, water plant supervisor. This afternoon, Moorhead Public Service sent out a press release initiating stage 1 of our drought response stage, according to Moorhead Public Service's water supply plan. This was brought about by a couple different reasons. First off, on Friday last week, on the 16th of July, Moorhead Public Service received a letter from the Minnesota DNR stating that due to greater than 50% of the total landmass of Minnesota experiencing severe drought, they are implementing the next phase in the statewide drought response plan. That means that the entire state of Minnesota now went to a drought warning phase, which had a couple specific action items that all public water suppliers needed to abide by. And to implement those, Moorhead Public Service used our stage 1 water supply plan to enact the watering restrictions mentioned in the press release. So what that means for the city of Moorhead and the city of Dilworth moving forward here is until further notice, we are going to have mandatory restrictions on watering of lawn irrigation, things of that nature that are outside that are considered non-essential. This means that on even days of the month, even addresses can water, and then on odd days of the month, addresses ending in odd numbers can water their respective portions. There are a few exemptions with this stage 1 process, things such as gardens, flowers, newly planted trees and shrubs, and new sod are exempt at this time. Really, we're trying to minimize that non-essential water use to make sure that we can use our resources as effectively as possible. As I said, right now we are in stage 1. As the situation progresses throughout the rest of the summer, that may change. It really depends on how much precipitation we receive throughout the rest of the summer. If preliminary projections from the NOAA are going to be correct, we're going to probably be in for a hot, dry summer with not a whole lot of precipitation. So this may change. At this time, Moorhead is going to be at stage 1. We do have a couple different trigger levels that move us from stage 1 to stage 2. We are really closely monitoring river levels as well as how much well water we're pumping through our aquifer system. That's something that we've been really keeping a close eye on since about this time last year. And really the drought situation that Clay County has been experiencing is really a continuation of weather events that started about 18 months ago. So we're keeping our finger on the pulse pretty closely on this one. At this point in time, we have sufficient water to meet all of our needs. This is really just trying to drive home the non-essential water use to be curtailed so that we continue to use this resource efficiently.
Thank you, Marc. Any questions for Marc? Go ahead, Chuck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Might be a dumb question, but is Fargo? I didn't read anything about Fargo. Is Fargo still normal with their use?
Good question. The city of West Fargo and Fargo proper are currently still doing voluntary watering restrictions. It's a little bit different. MPS would have originally looked at doing voluntary restrictions until we received a letter from the Department of Natural Resources on Friday afternoon last week. That was really the change that implemented Moorhead going from voluntary to mandatory restrictions. It was that letter sent from the state agency.
So does this, you might not know this, but so does the state of North Dakota, do they dictate if Fargo should go on that, usage policy?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the exact process is. I know that Fargo and West Fargo have a very robust drought response plan similar to what Moorhead has. I know that the folks over at the Fargo water treatment plant are keeping a close eye on this stuff as well. They watch some of the same pieces of data sets that we do. For example, the Orwell Dam and reservation flow levels and elevations. They're tracking them just as frequently as we are. We also track the Bois de Sioux watershed where the Lake Traverse flood mitigation project is. They currently have zero flow coming out of their system. So we're really watching closely what the Orwell Dam is discharging, and we're seeing that there's some pretty significant evaporative losses at this time, but we're still getting what we need to treat and use for our consumptive purposes. So for now, again, we're good, but we just want to make sure it stays that way.
Okay, thank you. I saw some pictures online of North Shore, and some of those falls are running dry. So it's a pretty scary situation for the whole country, I think. So pray for rain.
Yep.
Thanks.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Marc, can you give me just a high-level brief update on the Buffalo Aquifer expansion project? I mean, I know that's one of our future drought resiliency projects, and I know we've been doing some preliminary engineering work and moving forward with that. I just can't recall time frame, and it'd be nice to talk about that project, I think, during this time of frightening drought facing us, and ensuring that our customers in the future will have that resiliency portion built into our system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So right now, the Buffalo Aquifer expansion has been on hold for about 1.5 years due to COVID restrictions. We just weren't able to really progress with that project. At this time, we are trying to reboot that. We're really in the phase of determining where we want to drill test wells so that we can implement a permit application to the DNR and then continue the process for the construction when it's deemed necessary. The real kicker for this one is to make sure that we are able to secure a permit for the appropriations for the groundwater itself. That's really the first step in the project that needs to be completed. And then after that permit is secured, we could really undergo construction whenever we deem it's necessary. But until we get a permit of some kind, we're unable to construct. So that's really the first step that needs to be accomplished. One of the other internal conversations that we've been having over the past few months is with the Red River Valley Water Supply Project coming out of Washburn, North Dakota, having a 72-inch pipeline disseminate water from the Missouri River eastwards towards the Red River Valley. That's something that Moorhead Public Service respectfully declined to continue a partnership with back in 2016. However, due to the changing circumstances and how things have changed in the past few years, we have discussed internally whether or not that's something that we need to reopen and revalidate to see if that's still an option that we need to be considering. So we're working on a couple different options.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and I like the idea of continuing to engage with the Red River Valley Water Supply Project just because it seems to be gaining traction and getting funding as far as constructing certain pieces. Certainly could potentially become a reality, shortly. I'm also just wondering, as far as funding, I know the American Jobs Plan has a lot of funding available for resiliency for communities. Related to climate change, absolutely drought conditions would be classified as that. And maybe that's something that we could look into as far as potential federal funding for either the Buffalo River Aquifer or other resiliency needs that our system has. And then, I volunteered to be a FEMA BRIC reviewer this last funding round in 21, and there were a number of water supply projects that were included in that funding round, whether it be emergency generators, all sorts of different things across the board related to sustainability and resiliency. And it might be a way to find some federal funds to supplement those projects in our capital improvement plan. So,
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that in-house Moorhead Public Service staff have been preliminarily looking into at this time. We're still trying to gather some more information about how we could potentially leverage some funding options like that, because we certainly don't want to undertake an additional large capital project without some outside funding to assist us to keep our rates stable.
perfect. Thank you.
Chad, or?
Marc, I know we have ample supply right now, but what's the level of when we are getting a little bit concerned on the Red River of being able to take water from the Red?
Well, the levels right now are just under 14 feet. That equates to approximately 876 feet above sea level. So that's right about at where the low flow level is for our intake system. However, that's the top of the concrete structure itself, not the screen itself. The screen is located somewhat lower than that. We have about 2 to 3 feet before we would start to have some preliminary concerns on flow from the river. So we have a lot of capacity left. So again, we're doing all right so far for capacity. We're monitoring it very closely, but we have a solid 3 or so feet before we're going to start watching, what the discharges are doing, because it may affect where we draw our source water from.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions for Mark?
I'm going to keep him up there for a second.
Okay.
Mark is continuing to work on the lime sludge dewatering facility and the south side water tower, and the south side water tower is getting close to completion. We've got the painting completed on that, and a couple of final pieces before we move on to I-94 water tower. So Mark, any updates you want to give on that?
Yeah, absolutely. This week, we're going to be finishing out the communication patching into the tower itself so we can monitor reference levels and valve positions and things of that nature. That's going to be finished out by the end of this week. As Travis had mentioned, the painters had completed the artwork on the top, so to all of the community involvement, present and past commission members, city council members, everyone who helped out with that project, thank you very much. You can see the fruits of your labors there up there now. It's looking, I think, excellent. So that part of the project is come and gone, and now that's closed out. So now the next steps are going to be disinfection of the interior wet portion of the bowl. It's the metal structure up at the top of that concrete pedestal. We're going to be initiating a flush of the water main extension to the site. And then after that, we're going to be disinfecting the interior and getting it put into service just in time for the I-94 water tower to be drained for its own rehabilitation project. So we've had a lot of water tower work over the past few years, and once we initiate the drain down of I-94, that represents the last one that we should have for the foreseeable future.
Great.
Yeah, Mark is just finalizing some sludge hauling pieces of that this week. He's getting some samples, and we'll be bringing a spec and bid back to you at the next meeting in late August for approvals to get rid of the sludge. So, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Other than that, that is all I have for the rest, unless you have questions for me.
Madam Chair,
Paulson.
that water tower looks amazing, so I just want to go on the record. So.
I want to go on the record too. I was on the committee, so I'll take full credit for it. Thank you.
I don't know about that. I was on the committee
Thank
too.
you, Councilmember Hendrickson.
Appreciate it.
Madam Chair was on there too, so
Yeah.
we'll split it.
See if I call on you again. All right, moving on to item 8D, the report on the America's Water Infrastructure Act Phase 1 completion.
Well, it's a water evening, I guess. We'll have Mark back up here to
Mark's
talk a
back.
little bit about this. This is the AWIA project. I know Mark has brought this up in the past, and he knows way more about it than I do, so I'm going to let him go ahead and speak to what he's working on.
All right, thank you, Travis. Marc Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. This report is signifying the Phase 1 completion of the American Water Infrastructure Act that Moorhead Public Service has been working on for approximately 1 year. Going all the way back to 2002, there was what was called the Public Health, Security, and Bioterrorism Preparedness and Response Act of 2002, and that mandated that all community water service providers that had greater than 3,300 individuals had to do what was called a vulnerability assessment. That was to make sure that if there were outside of normal circumstances that a utility experienced, specifically a water utility, would they be able to effectively handle it and maintain service. So it was an in-house identification of what risks we may have to our system, what resiliencies we could add to the system, and how could we make the water system in general more robust, more reliable, and better able to service the customers of Moorhead. And that was, at the time, a one-time vulnerability assessment that had some action items attached to it. At the end of October in 2018, Congress passed what was called the American Water Infrastructure Act of 2018, which basically reopened the book on that previous vulnerability assessment and told public water suppliers serving more than 3,300 individuals it was time to update that vulnerability assessment and then add in a few certain extra factors that were mainly climate-based. It was to make sure that things such as droughts wouldn't negatively impact the system to the point of failure, and it was to make sure that we were really keeping up on making sure that water systems were resilient as they could be. So in the end of June 2021, Moorhead Public Service successfully completed and certified the completion to the EPA that phase 1 for this risk resiliency assessment was completed. So now that that is completed, we're now moving into phase 2, the final phase of the American Water Infrastructure Act, which takes that newly updated vulnerability assessment, and in the new version it's called a risk and resiliency assessment. And we use that to create a more up-to-date and usable emergency response plan that's specific to the utility. This one's a little bit different. These documents, they remain in-house. We don't ship them out to the EPA for keeping on their files. So this is something that we can really put a lot of information and data into and make sure that the emergency response plan is accurate as it can be. And it's really meant to be somewhat of a living document that's updated on a regular basis every few years to make sure that the information is current. If there's new situations that could present resiliency challenges, that they be tackled effectively, and that we're just keeping up on what we need to be. So this portion here is signifying that the phase 1 completion is now done and certified. The phase 2 is just beginning, and the due date for that one is end of the year 2021. So we're already getting after this phase 2.
Is this something that you anticipated, and it's not a project that's outside of ordinary? I mean, you always knew that phase 2 was coming up? Or
Correct, yes. The phase separations between phase 1 and phase 2 were pretty clearly represented to all the municipalities throughout the country that needed to do it. There was a lot of press releases on it at the federal level saying to the American, I'm losing my acronyms here, to all the municipalities and public service providers in the whole country that have the population threshold or higher, they actually broke it out into 3 tiers. So for larger systems that had over 100,000 residents or customers, they had an accelerated time frame, and they had a certain few pieces that were maybe a little bit different. Moorhead had the lowest threshold for population, so we were 3,300 to 50,000, so we were on a different time schedule, but more or less the same finish points. So it was very clearly defined to all the public water suppliers throughout the whole country that, you know, after you get the risk and resiliency assessment updated, it's time to use that to make sure that the resiliency on the back end is covered as well.
any other questions for Marc? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to accept the report.
Moved.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion by McDougall, seconded by Paulson, to accept the report on America's Water Infrastructure Act Phase 1 completion. Discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Paulson.
I really like this process, and you know, the idea of being able to see what our risk and resiliency assessment looks like at the completion of phase 2, I think would be very valuable. And I'm sure we'll get that when it comes, but there certainly could be some policy ramifications there of where we want to go, and fully understanding what our risks are to our system, and probably looking into resiliency projects that we could implement to mitigate against those risks. So good work on this, Marc, Travis. This is very interesting. And I also think the federal administration right now is really focused on these types of projects to, you know, mitigate our risks and create resiliency within our systems. So certainly, you know, probably some other options here to look for federal funding and strengthen any grant applications with the data and the information that we can compile from this. So
That's a good point, and I'm hoping that we do get that information that you're looking for. Any further discussion?
Marc, quick question for you. I don't remember if you said it, but when do you have to have the phase 2 done?
Phase 2's completion date is December 31st, 2021. So with the consultant firm that we've been working on this with, we have a game plan to have it done well ahead of time. We said that internally, you know, if we're working on it in December, that means we fell behind somewhere. So we're very confident that we'll get this done ahead of time.
And then, yeah, we should discuss how we present it to the board. You know, depending on what's in that document, we might have to be in closed session for something like that, but still something we could provide because of resiliency and bioterrorism and everything else, the risks that we have. So, but yeah, I think we can somehow figure out a way to bring it back to the board that way.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we won't be going into closed session today, so I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
Motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougall to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.